200 acres. We pasture raise 5 different poultry species: chickens, turkeys, geese, guineas, and ducks. And we hand butcher them on the farm in a USDA-inspected processing plant I built. We pasture raise 5 red meat species: cows, hogs, sheep, goats, rabbits, and hand butcher them at a separate USDA-inspected facility that I built. We raise pastured eggs, organic vegetables, honey, and a bunch of other little ancillary businesses that go from the organism that is white oak pastures. It's very different from what I did prior to 25 years ago.
What did you do prior to 25 years ago?
So prior to the mid-90s, I ran it as my father had, as a very linear, monocultural cattle operation, the factory farm model.
Mm. And what made you make a shift to the way you're doing it now? Would you call it the way you're doing it now regenerative agriculture? That's how you would describe it?
Yeah, I would. It's just a matter of days before big food takes that description away from us. But it was sustainable. It's been organic. Now it's regenerative and makes it be resilient. But it is a kinder, gentler agriculture.
And it's an agriculture where everything works in symbiosis. Is that a safe thing to say?
It's a great thing to say.
The chickens grazing, the manure that the cows lay, everything goes back together.
Exactly. We call it biomimicry, the emulation of nature. It's a very imperfect emulation, but it's better and better, and it serves to restart the cycles of nature, which we broke through industrial farming, and make our living off the abundance that comes from properly operating cycles of nature.
And did you go out on your own to learn this? If your father was a monocrop agriculture guy and you developed the farm in this way, obviously it must have taken a lot of planning. So how did you decide to make that shift, and what was the motivation?
Okay, I'll give you the motivation first.
Okay.
I operated the farm very industrially, as my father did, for the first 20 years. I graduated from the University of Georgia College of Agriculture with a degree in animal science, not animal husbandry. And I operated the farm very industrially. By industrially, I mean I used a lot of technology. We misapplied technology. We some therapeutic antibiotics, ionis fours, hormone implants.
Hormone implants?
Yeah.
How does that work?
From an endocrine point of view, you got to talk to somebody else. But,
okay.
but the way it works is you can buy hormone implants for cattle, and you actually give little pellets that you put in the skin behind their ear, and it causes them to grow faster. And
wow. Is that commonly used?
Yeah. In the industrial model, it's very, very commonly used. It's a multi-million or billion-dollar industry.
Wow. So they give the cows extra hormones so the cows get larger, and they try to feed them quicker, and they're feeding them mostly green to get them fat.
Correct, which is a very unnatural feed stuff for a ruminant animal.
Yeah. That's a fascinating thing, isn't it? Because so many people like grain-fed steaks. They like that real fatty thing, that if you give them a grass-fed steak, it's almost like, this is interesting. It tastes different. Like they're not accustomed to it. It's a little chewier. It's a little different.
It is. And we never market our product by saying, this is the most tender steak you've ever put in your mouth. Right. I hear grass-fed producers say that, and I wince, because they're setting an expectation we can't get to.
Well, it's also, we have to look at the reality of why that animal is so chewy, or it's so easy to chew. It's because it's got no, the body is unhealthy. There's so much fat in the system that the body's marbled with fat. Like if that was a human being and you saw it like that person would be sick. Like if you look at one of those cows that's like completely infused with fat, if that was your body, you'd be like, wow, I might need to get myself together because this is not good. This is not a good look.
A feedlot cow is an unnaturally obese creature that would never occur in nature.
Never.
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 Never. So a bull or heifer that I slaughter would be 2 years old. It would weigh live weight 1,100 pounds. It would have 2 or 3/10 inch of back fat. And if I gave that animal a presidential pardon and said, we're not going to slaughter you at 2 years age, they would live to be 20-something years old, probably. That's the normal life expectancy of a cow. Contrast that to a feedlot animal that would yield prime or choice. They would be probably 16 to 18 months of age, not 2 years, they would probably weigh 1,400 pounds, not 1,100. They would have 3/4 of an inch of back fat. And while I have not done this, I would be willing to bet you that if you left that animal in the feedlot, gave it that same presidential pardon, it wouldn't live much over another year or so. You're eating a naturally obese creature that would never occur in nature and is slowly dying of the same diseases of sedentary lifestyle and obesity that kill most of us.
So you're saying that a cow that's with a grain-fed diet, before they slaughter it, they just let it live. It would only live a year or so longer than that?
I don't have. Yeah, that's my bet. During the pandemic panic, when the packing plants were closed down, they were euthanizing chickens and hogs, particularly because they couldn't slaughter them, so they euthanized them. Now, I own my own packing plant, and we never shut down. That's a sign of resilience. But if I had, I wouldn't have euthanized anything. They'd been fine. They would have kept eating, but they'd been fine.
And you would have gone right back to the natural cycle 2 years later if you had to shut down for that long.
Yeah, I mean, we would have just kept accumulating animals in the pasture until I could open my packing plant back
Now,
up.
why did they have to euthanize the animals? Because they didn't have the resources, or because the animals weren't doing well? Like, why euthanize? To me, when I hear euthanize, I think something's wrong. Like you got to put them down because they're sick, or there's no room for them. Or why are they doing that?
I would say it's because those are confinement animals that live in very expensive confinement facilities, and they had nowhere to go with them.
That's hard to deal with. That's just hard to imagine that life becomes that invaluable, that you could just decide to euthanize them all. No one's going to buy them. We're just going to kill them all.
I think that's what happened.
So 25 years ago, you changed the model of your farm and you restructure everything. What were the steps you had to do, the steps you had to take to go about doing that?
Okay, so it was, you first asked why. So let me answer that. Then
okay.
So this is not to my credit, but I in my 40s, I became increasingly aware of the unintended consequences of the production model that I was using, the industrial commodity centralized model. And I didn't like it much. The more I looked at it, the less I liked it. Animal welfare was the canary in the coal mine. I really, what I had previously believed to be good animal welfare is what most people still think of as good animal welfare. And that is, you keep the animal well fed, watered, in a comfortable temperature range. You don't intentionally inflict pain and suffering on the animal, and you're good to go. All the boxes are checked. That's good animal welfare. But to me, and I subscribe to that, but to me in my 40s, I didn't like that much anymore. I felt like it was, in addition to those things, incumbent upon me as the stockman to give the animal an environment in which it could express instinctive behavior. Chickens are meant to scratch and peck.
Yeah.
Hogs are meant to root and wallow. Cows are meant to roam and graze. But in the CAFO confinement model, those instinctive behaviors are not an option for them. And I believe that puts the animal. I think it's like if you're raising your kid, let's talk about good parenting. Good parenting doesn't mean you take your child, your daughter, and put her in the closet. It's 72 degrees. You got the light on. You got a mattress in there. You give them all the Cheetos and Oreos and Fritos they want, and that's good parenting because they'll never be abducted. They'll never get fall down and break their leg. But it's not. You got to give those children the opportunity to express instinctive behavior, and I think that's also incumbent upon the stockman with his livestock. So I changed the way I raised at that time.
Gradual process of improvement?
It is.
Wow. So you got to be very committed to that because it's costing you money. It's like you're 30 plus or somewhere in the neighborhood of 30% less productive in terms of.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, this is a long-term investment to take this industrialized property and turn it into what it is now. Wow.
Which harkens back to your question about why don't my neighbors?
Of course. It's too much work.
There's the answer.
Yeah, there's the answer.
And expense and risk.
And you have to be ideologically committed to doing it that way.
You do.
To justify doing it.
You have to have a very generational view of things.
Yeah.
If your view, like most business people, including farmers, is what we learn in accounting, the quarterly report or the annual report.
Yeah.
You'd never do this.
No.
But if you have a generational view, which is easy for us because we're 6 generations on the farm, then it becomes more tolerable.
Do you think